Welcome to the LRNteach.com podcast, helping you consider Christian education for the poor and marginalised from a theonomic perspective. LRNteach.com advises you to cease from man and to think God's thoughts after him. Find us at LRNteach.com on YouTube and in the iTunes Store. Contact me at facebook.com/Christian.education. Jeremy, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background, where you live, and if you would tell us a little bit about your family as well, please.
Well, definitely. My name is Jeremy Walker. I'm a reverend, and I currently live in Bonita Springs, Florida. I'm 33 currently. As far as my background, I grew up in Florida, Pensacola, Florida originally, and we moved to a small town called Live Oak, which is a very small town. Just myself and my two sisters, my father and mother. With them, of course, we were a Christian family, very basic, normal Christian family. Grew up in the Southern Baptist community from the time I was 4 years old. We were always in church, and anybody who's familiar with that background, evangelical Southern Baptist, go to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesdays. And that's kind of my background. As far as my family, how I grew up, very normal family for where we grew up in our times. Everybody was public schooled where I was grown up. I attended public school, my sisters did. I went up through about 10th grade, and then the last 2 years I went to a private school, which my church started. The Southern Baptist Church, they tried to start a school, and they did, and we were there for 2 years. It's a very good switch. But for the most part, everybody grew up in the public school system where I was from. Despite, we had churches on every corner, it's a Bible Belt area, but everybody went to the public school. It didn't matter which church they went to. That's pretty much the background and where I grew up and came from.
It sounds familiar to me, and I'm sure it'll sound familiar to many other folks who are listening. So how then did the Lord take you from where you were, Southern Baptist, mostly public school educated, into a Christian ministry educating children?
It started when I went to my private school. I found that I had apparently a talent for working with children. An elderly woman that was part of my church saw me one day. I was working with some of the kids, and she pointed out that I was good with kids. I realized that I was the youngest of my family, so I had no real interaction with younger siblings, just older siblings. But apparently I was good with younger kids. Also at that time, coming from a public school setting into a private school setting, we had to do testing. And I was in honors classes growing up in the public school system. When I did my assessments, however, to see where you were in reading, comprehension, math, all the rest, I found out that I was basically functionally illiterate, which was quite a shock to me. I always took myself to be an honor student, but apparently was not. And then, of course, as I grew older, you started to see some of the problems in the institutional church these days. There's a separation between a person's profession and their actions. There really should not be a separation. But even when I was young, I started to realize this, and I was not converted till I was about the age of 16. Prior to this, of course, Southern Baptist background, we'd walk down the aisle, of course, and prayed the sinner's prayer, all the normal things you would do in the institutional church today. But there was still a separation between the person's actions and what the profession was. When I was converted, my conversion was very different than everybody else, and the fact that even though I'd grown up in the church, I did not walk down the aisle and pray a prayer and have an emotional experience, but I started to see a change in desire, a change in who I wanted to be friends with, what I wanted to do, and I knew that this was different, and I just couldn't put my finger on it because of the background I came from. It was always supposed to be some experience, write your name in your Bible with the date that you accepted Jesus into your heart, and this was supposed to be your assurance is, I decided to follow Jesus. They even have a song, I have decided to follow Jesus. That is the indicator, is the day you made the decision to follow Jesus. And my experience was more along the lines of the day that Jesus decided to choose me and change me. And that was the real difference for me. Even though I talked to people within the church, I still had somebody who asked me if I prayed the prayer even after I was, in my mind, obviously converted. I had the fruit of conversion. And then after we sat down in the man's office and we did pray the prayer together, of course, the normal thing that they would do. The guy clapped me on the shoulder and he goes, "Well, how do you feel now?" And I said, "Well, fine, I feel good." But honestly, it was just, there was a big problem with the Southern Baptist community. And I would say the church is general rule, not just that community.
God used an older lady in the church to highlight your skills as someone who can work with children well. But was there a book or a person that you can remember, or maybe a video, or was there some catalyst that maybe led you to start questioning the Southern Baptist position and embrace a more biblical position?
Definitely. I was introduced to R.J. Rushdoony. I was not familiar with him at all at the time. A person who had run my Christian school that I went to, they had introduced me to him with his books. And at the time, of course, I was getting older. I was now 17, turning into 18, graduating high school, and already been converted right around 16. And at this point, of course, you're deciding what to do with your life. You're supposed to go to college next. But of course, I didn't know what to do when I went to college. Some people just go to college because they're supposed to go to college, is the next rite of passage for people. It's just supposed to be what you do. So when I was in that transition phase, it came to my attention that there were people in Naples, Florida, not far from where I lived, just in North Florida, that were very versed at Christian education. And they would also bring in people to train them how to be Christian educators. They had a college, which was kind of a substitute for typical college. They would actually bring you in, train you how to do it, and then you could, of course, go and successfully run your own school. And when I became aware of this, I sought this opportunity to come down to Southwest Florida and have an interview with Dr. Ellsworth McIntyre. He's the one who originally started the schools and ran the schools. And I had a sit-down meeting with him and discussed what the program was and how I could fit into this kind of a program. It appealed to me immediately. I was already interested in education. Where I came from, of course, education was failing, and I think it's just gotten worse since I left high school. And, of course, the churches were failing. Theology is pretty much non-existent except for trust Jesus, and that's all you need to know, John 3:16. And so with those two things that are failing, education in general, and then, of course, theology, failing and proper understanding of the Bible, this was a perfect opportunity for me. And after some thought, I decided to take up an apprenticeship with Grace Community Schools, which was the people that were doing this apprenticeship, Dr. Ellsworth McIntyre. And I took up the apprenticeship. It was a 3-year apprenticeship that I agreed to, which was the time that was needed in order to be properly trained and to learn the skills that were needed to be a teacher, to handle classroom control, run a building successfully. And so that's pretty much the catalyst that got me to where I'm at currently, was R.J. Rushdoony's teachings and the opportunity with Grace Community School.
And we do hope, of course, that perhaps someone who's listening now will be being introduced to this for the first time, and perhaps this will start them on their journey towards opening their own school. That would be wonderful. Or just helping somebody along in the thought process. I have gone the traditional route of college, and of course there's a joke that says, what do you say to an arts graduate? And the answer is, Big Mac and fries, please. And I've also done further theological Bible college, and that's perhaps even less useful in many ways. But what do you think is the most strategic ministry? Would it be, in your opinion, a ministry of opening a daycare along the Grace Community Schools lines, where you're teaching the Word of God daily to children from all sorts of backgrounds and getting paid for it? Or perhaps teaching upper level PhD students, master's students in a faithful seminary?
That's a very good question. A couple points there that are divergent, that are important. One would be is like where I was at when I was 18 years old, looking for what is the next step for me. Should I go to college? Should I go to seminary? What should I attempt to do? And then, of course, when you're doing that, you have to worry about scholarships, or where you're going to get the funds, or you're going to end up with debt. The wonderful thing about the program that I undertook with the apprenticeship program, it's built upon the premise of financial independence and not debt. It's built on the premise that you can get your degrees that you would need, because, of course, in this world, you're going to have certain degrees for certain things, especially in education. So we were able to, as part of the program, you were able to go to college, your college courses while you worked. So you did not give up multiple years of your life just in sheer academic training, but you got the degrees at the same time as also getting actual training, real world training, which is a very big difference between just learning about it in textbooks. And so you're able to do both. You're able to go to college, get your degrees. Myself, I was able to earn a bachelor's in Christian early childhood education. I also went on to get a master's degree in Christian education as well. So I hold both of those. At the same time, of course, I did not incur the debt that comes with traditional college, nor did I have to give up years of my life going off to some college campus, putting everything on hold, coming out, and then finally searching for a job. By the time I was done with my stuff, I'd been working the whole time. I already had skills already before my college work was even done in practical stuff. I think the biggest goal would be to get a marketable skill. A piece of paper is wonderful, but it does not pay the bills. You have to be able to do something that's worth paying for, a marketable skill. And of course, Grace Community School is able to give me that as a teacher, how to actually run a school and do so without having to be financially hurt by this. But you could run a school, could be full-time missionaries, and you could still make a profit at the same time. So this was a very, very unique opportunity and a very unique ministry. And as far as which is more important, I would definitely say you got to look at the perspectives. Many people look at missionaries that go off into the foreign field. This is the only place to be a missionary, and certainly we do need missions around the world. But it is not the only mission field. You also have those locally as well. So you do have both of those. You have the ones, people that are very necessary to go out into the world, and you also have those that are born every day. Every day you have a new group of children who have not heard the gospel. So it's not just people in far remote places that have not heard the gospel, but you have brand new children that are born every single year. These children are in the exact same boat as the rest of the people around the world. And so you can be a missionary right in your own backyard, which is also part of that. And starting with young children in particular, many times when you're dealing with people at the college level, you're dealing with people who years and years and years, they've been trained in a certain manner. They have a certain, people like to use the word worldview. They have a certain idea of morality. And so if you start at the college level, you're trying to undo years and years of bad doctrine, bad education, bad training. Drop down to the high school level, same thing. Middle school level, same thing. And so the approach to starting with young children, as young as 2 years old, is very different because now you're starting to get down to the groundwork, the foundations of where this child is going to learn. You get to be there first. You get to be in there and be able to present the gospel to these children. You get to teach them God's word. You get to give them the biblical worldview that God is in charge. They were created. They are not the result of natural processes, that there is a moral law that they need to obey. In short, as far as when we teach children, it's very simple to understand for them. Good things happen to you when you keep the commandments, and negative or bad things happen to you when you don't. The harder you work, the better you are. If you steal, bad things are going to happen to you. And so when you can get in there first and you can lay the foundation, in the Bible, of course, many times the disciples talked about, we started this and then one would plant and one would water. And we get to be in there first and to lay the foundation for these children and plant the gospel in them. And of course, instead of undoing years and years and years and years of all this bad doctrine, we can sit there, be the first people in. And these children are very happy to sit and listen to someone who's telling them the truth. And because the Word of God is written on their hearts, they know it already to be true. All we're really doing is bringing it to the surface and telling them what they already know is right. And so I would say that would be the real big difference between where you start. Starting at the bottom in more of a preschool, which is what Grace Community School and I'm oriented in, versus starting at the top level with starting colleges.
Just to underline certain things, it may sound to some people that it's a very unspiritual thing to talk about money and debt and making best use of your time. There is a heavy deal of mysticism in the Christian church today, which degrades and downplays the importance of these things. But when we go to the Bible, we discover that things like staying out of debt and being economically productive are a result of an obedient life, a life lived to please our Lord. So these are not mere pragmatically helpful things. These are matters of central importance. And also, just to say that there is a model out there, if you're interested in doing something that's theonomic, quote unquote, and covenantal, well, you don't have to call it so. You don't have to put that on the shingle, hanging on the shingle outside. But you can have the law of God and you can have the covenantal outlook where it matters when you're teaching to children. So I think it's a superb ministry. And I want to say, if you're at all in a position to check it out and to weigh it up, I suggest you do that. But can you just go a little bit further and say what makes Grace communities different from the typical daycare in town? Aren't daycares all basically the same?
Well, it's a general rule. Childcare facilities are all the same, much like saying all public schools are the same as a general rule. They're all void of any Christian teachings at all. They're certainly void of belief and teaching that there is a creator and that men are responsible to him. They're also void of the teaching that God has a moral law, 10 Commandments in short, and that people are responsible to keep these commandments, and they'll be blessed if they keep them, and they will not be blessed or cursed if they break them. And one of the huge differences with Grace Community Schools versus other child care facilities is that it is uniquely Christian. Much unlike the institutional churches as a whole, when a child is trying to decide, do they really know Jesus? They're not being pointed at a profession of faith per se, at least not by itself. They're also being asked to look at their life. Do they see themselves have a growing ability and desire to keep God's commandments? Now, we're not talking about perfectionism, but there should be a growing desire, a sanctification that is the indicator of salvation itself. And that would not only separate Grace Community Schools from the typical daycare that does not talk about the Bible at all, but also separate Grace Community Schools from the majority of all Christian schools as a general rule. It is uniquely Christian in that aspect of the assurance of salvation as well. It's also very unique, the fact that it does have a no debt policy where it's not going to be operating in debt. Most Christian ministries, as a general rule, are set up on a donation basis where they're going to be seeking out donations. Missionaries in particular are set up on a donations basis where they would have to go out, seek donors from churches or individuals who would possibly agree with their doctrinal stances, or at least the missionary would have to be quiet about their beliefs so they could get the donations from prospective churches or donors. Where, of course, the Grace Community model is very different from that, in that it seeks to get those funds from what it supplies to its parents and to its students. It provides childcare, watching children on a daily basis. It's also unique for the fact that it teaches reading. Very young children, prior to the age of 5 years old, it's very typical in our schools for children to be reading. By the time that they're in kindergarten, they can be reading at the 4th or 5th grade level with ease, which also separates Grace Community Schools from almost every child care facility that I know of. We've been doing this for a very long time, and for the most part, they are against reading almost as a general rule. So that's one thing that very much separates them. Also, the fact that the ministry itself, because it is more of a profit basis, Christians in general rule, as you said, people typically don't like to equate Christian ministries with the idea of profits or businesses, these kinds of things, much less even on a personal basis. But the Bible is very clear that it's important for Christians that they take care of their own families, their own responsibilities, their own duties. This takes financing. If you're going to properly care for your family, you're going to need money to do that. Money is not dirty. The Bible does say that the love of money is the root of all evil. But money is not the root of evil, but it's the love or the seeking of it. The Bible is very clear that as you keep the commandments, God can add wealth without all the sin that would come with it from a person who's just seeking to be wealthy. But the Christian who keeps God's commandments, works harder. In the Bible it says also that in all labor there is profit. So that the harder a person works, the more money they can make. And of course, the more that a person makes by their labor, by their diligence, by their obedience, then the better they're able to care for their family, take care of their responsibilities. And also, on top of that, to be generous on top of it. The Bible says that a person is to work so they can also give to others. Who can better give to others than that man who has worked harder and has more than he needs? And this would take profit. Now, the church is very hesitant to talk about this, but I think the biggest reason for that is because there's separation from the world itself. Somehow they've separated, once again, profession from actions. If a person is a Christian, they should be working more diligently than the person who's not, because they not only are working for their employer, but they're working for the one that really sees them. God sees what they do. And not only do they make their employer happy, but they also make God happy who gave them their job or gave them their business. And so they're going to work harder also because they have a theological groundwork and a reason to do that. And so I say all that to say is that most Christians do avoid these issues of talking about money, but it's absolutely necessary. The Bible talks about money almost more than anything else. It's very important It's a very important topic, and Christians should get back to this topic.
Grace Community Schools as childcares teach the Word of God systematically. Now, a popular verse when I was growing up was Isaiah 55:11. So shall my word be that goes out from my mouth. It shall not return to me empty, but it shall accomplish that which I purpose, and shall succeed in the thing for which I sent it. So, if the word goes out, we expect fruits. We expect to see results. So, what impact have you witnessed as the word has gone out in the lives of children and their parents and their families generally?
Well, this is also an opportunity, which jumps back to your question about working at the upper levels versus working with young children. When you're working at the upper levels, you're trying to work with people, especially in the Christian community, to get them to make a profession. If, of course, they have gotten people to make a profession, then it's considered successful. The ministry is successful. Typically what they'll do is they'll say how many people have accepted Jesus into their heart this week, this kind of thing. When you're working with young children, the biggest thing you're going to see with them is the change in their lives, how they're going to live. Not necessarily the professions that they make, or you're not trying to count those professions, but you're telling the children not only is a profession needed, but also, are you getting better at listening to father and mother? Are you getting better at keeping the commandments God's given you? And this is more along the lines of that. The ministries that we do in particular deal with broken families. I think everybody understands that the majority of marriages are in absolute ruin. This is inside the church and out. There really is no difference just where the people are at. They profess to be Christian, pretty much all the same. A very realistic outlook of what Grace Community does is it is a ministry specifically to widows and orphans, I would say. The widows might be widows because of maybe the husband left them, maybe it was never a husband, but they're typically on their own. Children, of course, being orphans, very rarely do they have both parents in the picture, typically only one, and sometimes none at all. Maybe it's just a guardian or grandparent that's actually caring for them. So that right there is something that our ministry is very unique for. Most Christian organizations are interested in more of what's considered respectability, which is why you'll see them work at the upper levels. They like the colleges, they like the high schools, they like the name academy behind them, these kinds of things. They'll give themselves titles, might say classical on it, that sound better, because it will give a certain respectability to the institution itself. But it's not about respectability when you're a missionary. It's about the results of what you're doing, about getting the gospel out to the people that need it and need it most. And our ministry being able to get out to the widows and orphans, that I would say, is a very unique ministry for that. So they get to see and hear what a real family is. Typically, especially like myself and my wife, we run the school here in Bonita Springs, Florida. We have 9 children, actually, ourselves. I missed this part earlier. I got married at 19, and with our 9 children, we also were able to have our children here at the school with us. So we actually homeschool the children here. So we actually work side by side, my wife and myself. There's not daddy gets up and goes off to work, and mommy stays at home and sees daddy later, which is okay. Different situations are what they are. But the situation we have is that we're able to work side by side. So with our children with us all day, we also control their education. And at the same time, we're also able to be full-time missionaries to fulfill the job of discipling the nations at the same time. It's really a full-orbed ability to do so that Grace Community's model does. And with all this, these children get to come in, hear the Bible, and they get to see a godly family in front of them. Many of the children grow up with us, some of them from the time that they're infants, and I've known them for some of them over 10 years, these children. So they get to stay with us for a very long time. They get to see my children born into the family. They get to learn that children are not a burden. Children are a blessing from God, and they see it in our faces every day when they see us with our infants. The parents that come into the doors, they also get to see a Christian family welcoming children into their family. The question all the time, of course, is, you're going to have some more children. When you have 9, you get that question a lot. And they don't understand it. They don't understand why a person would have children. But as Christians, we get to explain this to them. We see it as a blessing from God. We welcome children, and we don't see them as a burden. We see them as a blessing. And this is something that people don't get to see. This is something that the children that come to the doors don't get to see. They don't get to see father and mother working side by side without screaming, fighting, cursing, you name it. They get to see it. It really chills my blood to if I was going to see some of the things they saw at their homes. But when they come into our facility, many of them treat myself and my wife as if they're seeing mommy and daddy every day. They really do. And in a very real way, we are the only stable force in many of their lives. They don't have any stability at home. They don't know if daddy's going to be there tomorrow. Very frequently, you can hear people say, I'm dropping you off this morning, but I'll be back. And it's very apparent in the child's eyes that sometimes they don't know if that parent is really going to be back or not. This is the reality of what we look at. And so this is the difference between starting at the top, starting at the bottom. And these children are getting an opportunity to see what a godly family looks like. And we get to teach them every day and say, this, what you're seeing every day in the world, is not what it should be. What you're seeing at Grace Community School, that is what it should be. You should have father, you should have mother, you should have children, all working together. You should have father and mother loving each other, taking care of each other, doing their responsibilities and duties, taking care of their children. They get to see the difference that there is between how I interact and my wife interacts with our own children compared to what their parents might do with them. And that right there really drives it home for them, especially when you're teaching the commandments every day, but they can't relate to those commandments. They can't relate to father taking care of his responsibilities. They can't relate to mommy taking care of her responsibilities because they don't. They've abdicated their responsibilities. Most of them are not married. So whenever you say that you're supposed to marry first and then you have children second, they do not see the world like this because that's not the world they see. So whenever they get to come in your doors and they get to see this, not only do you get to hear it and say, well, this is what God says, but then they see it. And this is why the witness that people have is almost infinitely stronger than any message you say. And this is why starting at the bottom is so integral, because you're getting to show them something they'll never see. And they'll almost never see it, even in the churches. And this is the sad part for me. But that right there, I would say, is the biggest thing of how we get to see lives change. And beyond this, many times churches will take their schools and they'll try to use the schools to bring in children to grow their numbers. They'll try to bring in the parents to get tithe money in the plate and try to get people on the rolls. And Grace Community does not do that. We are a missionary outfit, and we are ministry to the children and the families, but we're not utilizing the children to get to the parents, to bring them into the church, to get tithe money from them. And they know this, and they respect it. I get another question from many people who say, well, do you tell people you're a Christian school? People have problems with this. I hear all these big issues in the world of atheism versus Christianity. But working in the real world, you see people from all different outlooks that will bring their children to Christians who openly tell them that they're going to be teaching them the Bible, openly tell them they're going to be teaching them that God's commandments are what they should be keeping. And no one says, don't teach that to my child. They all will say, thank you very much. That's very important. Now, these are people who don't go to church. These are not people who profess to be Christians. But once again, the law is written on their heart. And so whenever I say, I'm going to teach your child, they need to listen to you. I'm going to teach your child that they should not steal. I'm going to teach your child that they should not hurt people. I'm going to teach your child that they should treat others like themselves. They instinctively know that's what their child should be learning. And I've even had them walk in and sit in Bible time and listen to me teach the commandments about thou shalt not commit adultery. And with children, though you're not graphic in detail, they can understand very simple things like father should be faithful to mother, mother should be faithful to father, and father and mother should both be faithful to their children. And even though those parents are not doing that themselves, they do not disagree that that's what should be. And they still want their child taught that. They want something better for their child. And that's what Grace Community School does, is it's able to do this. Get in there first, present the gospel, and also have the family structure, as we're talking about, that works best. So they get to see what they will not see at home. And that's a Christian family and what they're supposed to actually do.
Again, as we read the Bible, we see the very great importance that it places upon how you treat the widows and the orphans, the most vulnerable. And I haven't heard the widows and orphans being really on the radar of most Christian schools. Perhaps I'm wrong, but almost the more I hear about Grace Christian and what they do, the more it seems like a total win. And the fact, I've just started reading Aaron Slack's book, and that it surprised me to hear that the children were there at school. And again, you're modeling a family. Would you say that you're seeing lives changed, families changed?
Well, definitely. Beyond the fact that we're setting the model up, recently, actually, I performed a wedding for some of the parents that went to our schools. They were not married. They had a child in our school, and the child had been here for many years, probably about 5 years. Of course, they got to see our example. They knew me and Abby very well, my wife Abigail. They knew our example. They were some of the families that got to see our children grow up. And then, of course, right before this child graduated kindergarten from our school, they came to me at the end of a day and said, Jeremy, and they respected us highly. They knew us. We had more than a profession of Christianity. We had actual evidence that we were different, and they knew that because they didn't just have us see us one day. They didn't just see us on Sunday morning. They saw us every day, 5 days a week. They saw us, and they got to see us over a period of years. And so these people, and encompasses all people, they get to see us on a daily basis, and they know that what we say, we actually live. And so these parents came to me and said, well, we would like to be married. We would like you to perform the ceremony. Would you do that? And of course, I didn't hesitate. I said, yes, of course I will. And we picked a date for them. It was just about a week or so after they asked me. And I went and I performed their wedding ceremony for them as well, because I'm an ordained minister as well. This is one of the things that is not uncommon with our schools. Because the examples we set, we also have children that go home quoting the commandments to their parents. We've had many cases, children will come in and go to their homes after being in our school for a little while, and the parents will come in with a funny story, and when sometimes embarrassing stories of where the child will ask, are you and daddy married? I could say that. A street preacher could stand and say, you should be married. A preacher could stand up and say, you should be married. And the parent, the person that's not married, living in sin, would buck at this. You can't tell me what to do. But when they hear their child look at them and ask this question, it drives a stake right into them because they already know what they're doing is wrong. No one has to really say it. They know what God's commandments are. But when they have their child ask them this question, I've seen people break and then ask one of the reverends, or like myself, to perform a wedding ceremony for them. And so we see families starting to come together like this, and this is not uncommon for our schools. This is one of the things that we do. People like to talk about Christian reconstruction, but many times when they say that, they're really thinking politics. They're not thinking about ground level, foundational rebuilding. And it starts with each person having a personal relationship with God, Jesus Christ, and then, of course, obeying God from the ground level, obeying those commandments, which should also be not only personally, but also marrying, having children, taking care of those children, this kind of thing. And that's exactly what we do. We're building from the ground up. And it won't take very long until these children are older and in society. As of right now, I've been doing this since 1999. I've been in Christian education with Grace Community School, and now we're in 2013. I'm now seeing my students when I go to the fast food restaurant, when I go to the mall. We'll see our students in these places, and they remember us. They know who we are. They've seen our life and everything through this. And so it doesn't take very long for these little tiny kids who are wearing diapers to grow up, and now they're the adults. We laid the foundation when they were 2, and now that they're in high school and going off to college, they've had a Christian foundation from the time that they were infants. It's very, very different from starting at the top and trying to convince people that everything they learned was wrong. At the beginning, you start at the bottom and you work your way up.
It really is a remarkable ministry, and I just flabbergasted every time I hear something more. It makes it more attractive, and I'm sure many people that are listening are thinking the same thing. So what's the number one piece of advice that you would give to those wanting to get involved with this young child ministry?
Consider the cost. You have to have the right theology, the right mindset for the mission. As the Bible says, no man puts his hand to the plow and then turns again. You have to be ready for the commitment that it takes to take on such a ministry. It is a very financially rewarding ministry on top of it because, once again, like myself and my wife and my family, even though we have 9 children, many people think that to have 9 children means you're going to live in poverty. It's going to be very difficult to get the basic needs met for your children when you have a large family. Quite the opposite is true. My wife and I have no debt of any sorts. We own our own home. We have 3 vehicles which are used as a bus ministry for our school. for after-school children, for the public school system, these kinds of things which we own. We have absolutely no debt whatsoever. So it is not only is it something that is very spiritually rewarding, working with your spouse, working with your children, controlling their education, being able to be evangelical and be full-time missionaries, but also, once again, because of the work, God has blessed the work of our hands, and we have also been able to stay out of debt, and of course, to be debt-free and have our home and everything. The advice that I would give would be to have the right mindset that you're working to be financially independent so you can care for yourself, family. People that are not financially independent are very handcuffed a lot in their beliefs. They refrain from teaching the truth, especially in Christian ministries, because if they do not, they might lose their job. And then, of course, they will have no form of income for their family. And so whenever you have a ministry based off donations and not based on profit making or no debt, then you're going to have that. I would go to our website, which is a great place to start, GCSapprenticeship.com, which discusses in detail quite a bit about the apprenticeship program. My own testimony is on there, along with many others. You can go to the testimonial section, it discusses it. There's also many books that are available for people who would like to have the proper theology and understanding. Dr. McIntyre has written one, which can be found there. Reverend Aaron Slack has written another, and both books can be found on the website. For those people that may not be in a position to take on an apprenticeship itself, Dr. McIntyre has written some time ago an operations manual. This would detail out how a person could run a facility like Grace Community Schools wherever they're at. This model has been used not only within the United States, but also around the world. We have missionaries that are in Japan and Mexico who also are utilizing the system that Grace Community Schools set up. And so it's very much so one that you can take with you. The operations manual is also being re-edited for the 2014 edition. It'll be out soon. And when that one is out, it has many additional content, so that if a person took that, it has all the information a person would need to run a facility and the proper understanding of it, so they would be able to not work on a debt basis or a donations basis, but have a profit-making or basis of it instead. Financial independence is the word for it.
Again, it's very exciting. That's very good advice, and I suggest people do that. If you're a Kindle reader, then those books, Ellsworth McIntyre's and Aaron Slack's, are available on Kindle. I'm reading the Aaron Slack book at the moment. Just finished the Ellsworth McIntyre book. Good reading, most inspiring and most challenging. And talk to these people, ask them questions, and really do count the cost and make it a matter of prayer, especially if you're in a position in the United States to avail of the apprenticeship program. So we've talked for a little while here. We've covered quite a bit of ground. Would you like to leave the listeners with any closing thoughts?
I would take, especially Christians like ourselves, they should definitely consider what it means to be evangelical. Those people that have a heart for missions, a heart for teaching in particular, a heart for possibly making a difference in society. There's lots of talk of that nowadays. But if you want to change things, you always have to start at the bottom. The voters, as they say in politics, can only vote for those people that are like themselves. And if their ideas and views are not biblical, then of course the leaders that they choose will not be biblical leaders either. Things are always changed from the ground up. I can't think of a more rewarding ministry than what Grace Community Schools has developed. I myself, of course, have taken part of that and been doing so for years. It really is the best ministry I can think of, the most unique ministry I can think of. I can't possibly think of a better way for a person to spend their time, especially young people in particular that are fresh out of high school, homeschooling. Instead of running off to college and wasting time and getting into debt, to take on the apprenticeship program itself, to get the ability to get college degrees that are necessary in today's world, and also not only to get the college degrees, but to get the know-how how to actually take care of yourself, be financially independent at the same time. Especially for the young people that have those decisions to make. They should consider doing what I did whenever I was faced with those decisions. I came out ahead. I can't possibly state it high enough of how thankful I am to what Dr. Ellsworth McIntyre and Grace Community Schools has meant to me. It meant a world of difference. God has really used this ministry. And of course, we wish that He would use it all around the world, not just where we're at. But that is the purpose of the apprenticeship program, is to train missionaries to go and throughout the entire world, wherever they are.
My particular focus in this YouTube channel and website is to think about Christian education from a theonomic perspective for the poor and marginalized. And it may seem a little strange to be talking about childcare and daycare for the poor and marginalized, but it would probably surprise you to know that such things do already exist in, for example, the capitals of Africa. There is a burgeoning middle class there in Nigeria and Ethiopia, where I was. I walked to work quite often when I spent a short time there, and I must have passed 4 or 5 Christian schools just in that short walk. So people around the world are paying for education for their children. A chap I talked to, the director of Christian Education Europe, Mr. Arthur Roderick, his vision at one point was to target the upper class folks in India. And fair enough, if you're upper class, then you're not poor and marginalized, but you're in a context where people might think India, universal poverty. There are opportunities worldwide to employ such a model and to really see a great reward. And the door might be closed to you working in Florida or elsewhere in the United States, but you might have a unique open door somewhere else. Do still get in touch if you're not an American and follow through, asking questions, and of course with prayer and counting the cost. Thanks again very much, Jeremy, for agreeing to be interviewed. That was very enjoyable and enlightening. And the plan is to talk to you again at another time about the apprenticeship program specifically and how to engage with the apprenticeship program. And we also intend at some point to talk to Aaron Slack about his new book. So it is an important ministry, and we'll plan to follow through with getting as much useful information out there as possible. So again, we thank you, and we look forward to talking to you at a later date.
Thank you for having me, and I'll be glad to do so again.
Thanks for listening. I hope you found it edifying. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and YouTube. Remember to think God's thoughts after Him by the power of the Holy Spirit. Until next time, every blessing in the Lord.